All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is day 22, episode 23 of 40 Days of 4VKM. We are almost through this, and, I think we got 17, 18 episodes left after this, so more than the halfway point. And this is a doozy. I got really excited recording or preparing for this episode today. I have a lot of notes. I'll send a picture of what my notes look like. You won't be able to read them. Nobody can read it, but hopefully I can read it as I get through this because there's a lot of stuff to cover in this episode and I don't want to miss anything. So, the episode is called, it's the grand finale of the Gridiron Gang, right? Gridiron Gang 4. It's actually fully titled Gridiron Gang 4 Horsemen of Conspiracy, right? Because we have the Conspiracy Horsemen on the show again, who we were on, and they had a very big guest that we're going to show you. So, episode came out on 9/21/21, September 21st, 3 days after John McAfee's birthday. And we start the video off with Mr. McAfee himself on the Conspiracy Horseman. Now, I like to brag because we were on the same show, and I actually, little old 4VKM did higher ratings than Mr. McAfee, right? So, just speaks to, how popular 4VKM is, despite the censorship and the shadow banning, but it's all good, all good. So anyway, we have McAfee. He's on talking to the Conspiracy Horseman. He went on there, I think, twice. They had a really good relationship going there. Bin Hameen, those guys out there. And I show you some clips because what's McAfee known for? McAfee is known for removing viruses, right? Taking viruses off computers. And we have a couple 4VKM episodes called Removing the Viruses, right? So, Removing the Virus 1, Removing the Virus 2. Those came out on 6/20/2020 and 6/17/2021. So, those will kind of come back to you soon. So, what was going on with McAfee? He was kind of on the run. Remember, he was staying overseas. They were saying that he was wanted for murder. That whole thing is sus. He never got to trial, never got his day in court, so, he can't really call him a murderer. He's never proven to be one. But, again, he's talking to these guys, Conspiracy Horsemen from overseas, and remind you of who the crew was. You had Bin Hameen, you had GGP, who, Greek god Papadon, and you have Big Sal. So, interesting thing I thought about GGP that I had learned is that his professional wrestling debut was on 7/17/99. Wow, what are the odds of that, right? What a little coincidence. You have GGP debuts on 7/17/99, the day after the plane crash, the day that the whole world found out about it. Little GGP is making his wrestling debut. Then you got Big Sal. He's the other guy. I've mentioned him before. He's in the group in ECW years ago called the FBI, the Full-Blooded Italians, right? So you got him working for the three-letter agency, FBI, right? And you have McAfee basically on the show explaining that the CIA really is the U.S. government. Anytime the U.S. government's doing anything a little shady or whatnot, it's basically the CIA. Hopefully that doesn't get me in trouble. So, a couple of things interesting as I would listen to that interview over and over again. He says 4.5 a couple times. So 4.5 is 4.5 if you think of it that way. So the first time he mentions it, he says 4.5 months ago he was in Cuba. And that's where he was. And the Cuban government had basically said, hey, the U.S. wants us to hand us over to you. But, we're just going to give you the heads up, get the hell out of here so we don't have to do that. And it's not our problem anymore. So they kind of gave him the heads up. He got the hell out. And at this point, I show you a couple clips. JFK Jr., he went to Cuba and he met with Fidel Castro, right? And they had a conversation, I think, about, did you have anything to do with what happened with my dad? And I think, he got the same answer from Castro that he's gotten from a lot of people, which is, I'm not stupid enough to have murdered a United States president. I love my country enough to know that it would have been wiped off the face of the earth if I had done that, right? So not saying Castro is a good guy by any means, but definitely don't think he had anything to do with the JFK assassination. And I think a lot of people, a lot of the misdirectors, they like to throw him in there as part of it to kind of cover up their own culpability, right? So, so you have Fidel Castro there. I was telling you about Big Sal. He was in ECW, three-letter agency, the FBI. And speaking of ECW, we have Ezra Cohen Watnick, right? So you have Ezra, remember from a couple episodes ago, he was elevated in the Department of Defense after President Trump lost the 2020 election. And during the transition period, if you remember, Christopher Miller, who was in charge of cybersecurity, he was elevated to acting defense secretary, right? So one of the things that they had done is they had reorganized, so special forces had a contact almost right to the acting defense secretary. So it's kind of interesting there. And you have Ezra Cohen Watnick talking about how, JFK was very big into the special forces. He saw it as this is going to be something big down the line, and was able to, put some effort around it. And if you do some research, JFK Special Forces, there's actually a lot of special forces involved in his burial and whatnot. So we talked about Red Castle before in a couple episodes, but there's some special forces tie-ins with there too in the funeral. So take a look at that stuff. Now going back to McAfee, what else did he mention? 4.5, right? Another 4.5. He said 4.5 days that he left Cuba and to go to the DR. Dominican Republic, right? So he goes to Dominican Republic, and you have another 4.5 there, right? So 4.5, 4.5, 45, and that's kind of a common theme that we see pop up, 45. And I just thought it was interesting. He mentioned it twice in this interview in a very short period too. So he gets asked by the conspiracy horseman about Epstein. Do you think he killed himself? And he basically lays out all the reasons why there's no way he did. Between the bunk bed being higher than, how tall he was, and the guards being mysteriously gone, and they got off the hook, right? The CCT cameras going out, right? So just a perfect storm of shenanigans that really led to that whole situation going on. And then we show you a clip. It's Epstein with Trump, right? This is the famous clip that everybody likes to jump on Trump about and say, oh, see, he was hanging out with Epstein, right? And Negative 48, who we talked about in the last episode, he narrates this perfectly, right? And he's not watching the video, but he narrates it perfectly. He goes, they tried to get Epstein close to Trump. They knew they couldn't control Trump, so they tried to get Epstein in there. There's that video of them where they're at the party. And, Trump's looking goofy, dancing around and stuff like that. And then he looks at Epstein and he does the whole, he draws the pedo sign, as we like to call it, right? And he then takes his same finger and he, puts in the form of a gun and he's like, I'm going to kill this pedo, right? So very interesting. And then what happens all those years later? Epstein's in jail while Trump's president, and, he ends up dead. Now, did he kill himself? Did he get broken out? What happened? I don't think anybody knows still. But at the very least, did Trump kind of fulfill that promise right there? I don't know. I'm not saying Trump gets people killed or anything like that. I'm just saying it's very interesting when you watch that clip back, right? And it's pretty obvious the symbol that he's doing as well. The same symbol that Sheila Jackson likes to wear on her ring in Congress, right? So what's up with that symbol? Who knows, right? It's just an FBI symbol. You can look it up, the clips in the video there. So they asked President Trump once Epstein is offed, and they ask him about it, and he says, well, Bill Clinton, he was on that plane 27 times and he went to the island. So why don't you guys ask him about what he was doing on that island, right? And the public flight logs only show him going on there 4 times, right? So unless it's somewhere new in the Epstein documents that have come out, you have Trump basically saying, hey, he was on that plane 27 times, right? So it's very interesting there. You have Juan O'Savin, right? So we have some clips with Juan O'Savin talking, and he's talking about McAfee and how McAfee's been talking about releasing information, WikiLeaks style, and Juan's like, just do it already. Like, just freaking do it. Like, what are you waiting for? If you have the information and all this horrible shit happened with kids and all this other stuff, what are you waiting for? Why don't you release it now, right? And you see some clips of McAfee on Twitter, basically people saying the same thing. Why don't you release it now? And he's like, because I'm a dead man. I like my life, right? As soon as I release it, I'm a goner. So, got a little tattoo called Whacked. Started up a little cryptocurrency called Whacked, right? It's on the Ethereum blockchain. It's burning, it's burning, it's burning. And he's explaining it all to the conspiracy horseman, how, he's basically, he's put it all the information on the blockchain where it can't be taken down, where it can't be removed. He can't even remove it himself, and it's going to be up there forever, right? So, still waiting for whatever that information is, but it's interesting regardless. So, I talked about this a couple episodes ago when we were talking about Conspiracy Horsemen, how McAfee and I shared the stage. Very proud of that. And there is a drop, right? So, McAfee dies. We all know what happened. He was in custody, and it wasn't long that he was found dead in a jail in Barcelona, just very similar to Epstein, right? After Epstein's situation. And obviously a lot of people find it sus, very sus. And I think it's sus too. Let me tell you why I think it's sus, right? So I mentioned the drop, I think it's 1528. So 1528, the date is June 17th, 617, timestamp's 1209. 1209, that's the day I was on the Conspiracy Horseman. 617, that's like my birthday, that's where I was born, it's my name. So I'm not saying like I'm in the drops or anything like that. It's a crazy coincidence to me when I see it, and I see that number and those two numbers together. And then what do we see with that also? We see Barcelona, the world is watching, right? So McAfee passed away on 6/23. That was 6 days after the previous removing the virus video that was released, right? So remember, I'm dropping videos removing the virus 6 days later from that one, which was released on June 17th of 21. You have McAfee removed, it was weird to me, right? So, yeah. So what else was happening during that time, right? The next day or the same day that the news comes out that McAfee was reported dead, you had a military plane flying from Barcelona back to the United States. The next day, you had Mr. Poole, who we haven't talked about yet, but Mr. Poole drops a post that says extraction. So, did they extract McAfee from Barcelona? The world is watching, right? That dropped 1528. The world is watching Barcelona, right? And then what ended up happening? As soon as McAfee was announced dead, his Instagram account posted a Q. And what's the picture in the Barcelona 1528 drop? It's a picture of a rock in Barcelona, Spain. And it says QAnon on the rock. So, very, very, very interesting. The world is watching, right? So, yeah, it's pretty wild here. Let me see, what are my notes? I can't read my chicken scratch here. Hold on. So, yeah, okay. So, contingency. It says contingency. You see it on my mess, you'll realize you wouldn't have been able to read it either. But, remember we talked about the WAC token, right? So now people are looking at the WAC token. They're finding the Ether address for it. They're, finding stuff on Disclosed TV and whatnot. It leads to a countdown. Juan O'Savin kind of talks about that countdown. So he's kind of changed his tune now. He was kind of shitting on McAfee. Release the stuff. And then once McAfee was out, he's like, oh, this is going to get interesting, folks. He's going to do it in a WikiLeaks style drop. And we have this countdown going. So they do the countdown, right? And nothing really big came out of it. I show you back the clip of McAfee explaining it all to the Conspiracy Horsemen and saying, hey, smart contracts can't get erased. it's going to be up there forever. There ain't nothing they could do about it, right? And once it gets on the internet and the deep internet gets it, I mean, they'll spread it, and Anons get it, they spread it everywhere, right? So I asked Grok, what's the latest update on the whacked token? And basically it's, go ask Grok yourself, right? If you have access to it, I'll take screenshots and I'll post it on my X so you guys can see it as well. But it basically says, the token is still burning, and, it's designed to basically burn itself to the ground. And at the end of it, we'll get a nice little surprise. And who knows what comes out of it, but it's like waiting for a fireworks display that you just never know when the fireworks are going to go off. Something along those lines. So I found that very, very, very interesting, right? So that's it for McAfee for now. We'll come back to him later. But, just a ton of information. I hadn't watched this video in maybe like a year or something like that. So going through it and just remembering all that stuff as it happened, it was very strange stuff. And the last thing that I'll say is that I think 107 was on with Tom Numbers, and Tom Numbers, I think, just asked him, he said, hey, is McAfee alive? Like, is he still alive, right? And 107 kind of just laughs, and he says, Valhalla, right? And he kind of chuckles, and he goes, if you know what Valhalla means, you know what it means, right? And Valhalla is basically where, I think it's Greek mythology, where basically all the warriors, it's like all the warriors in heaven or something like that. So, I don't know. Is it heaven on earth? Or is it heaven in the sky? I guess we'll find out one day. Or maybe we don't ever find out, right? That would be sad. So, now, we haven't talked about wrestling yet in this clip. So, we're going to kick it back over. Remember, I was talking to you about Cameron Grimes in the previous Gridiron Gang, the third one. He was kind of that redneck hillbilly that made it big on Dogecoin and AMC and GameStop and all that other stuff. So he's living the gimmick now. He's at an auction on NXT TV, and the auction is to buy a house. And he's bidding for the house. He thinks he's got it, but there's a guy holding up a number 89 sign. 8 plus 9 is 17, just a coincidence, right? Who's that person end up being that outbid him for the house? It was the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, right? So Ted DiBiase, who shook hands with President Trump at WrestleMania 4 and 5, he is back in NXT all the way back later in 2021. So Cameron Grimes gets outbid. This brings back Ted DiBiase onto TV, and they kind of have some fun skits, and he comes back later in a little bit. Now, the other thing that was going on around this time is that they were doing these little dog promos, right? So like they have this little, bougie dog running around backstage, and it would just be a clip of the dog, right? And then the announcers would be like, what's up with the dog, right? So they were doing this for week after week after week after week. And it ended up being a wrestler by the name of Frankie Monet, who is a female, and she comes out and she debuts with the dog, right? So she comes out with the dog, and, the next day that she comes out with the dog, Dogecoin blows up. It was the next day. It went, boo, right? I made a lot of money off Dogecoin, just like CG, Cameron Grimes, did over there. So I always thought that was super strange because they're doing dog comms on TV. Nobody knows what it is. And they're doing this for weeks and weeks and weeks. She shows up with the dog, and the next day, Dogecoin blows up, right? So what are the odds of that? We get to see Dave Portnoy is a little upset because he missed out on the Dogecoin a little bit, and that's our first, whiff of him there. But going back to that $1 Million Man. $1 Million Man, we just learned Gematria really well now from -48. He's been out for a couple months teaching everybody Gematria. And $1 Million Man comes out to 174. You have Trust the Plan is 174. You also have those famous words that President Trump said when they asked him, "What storm, Mr. President?" And he said, "You'll find out." That also equals 174. So it was interesting timing for me to see $1 Million Man come back. We're learning these numbers. We're applying it to wrestling. And we're like, wow, this is kind of like all... Whew. At the same time, we've got Jim Brewer and Anthony Cumia, and they're on his show. And I mean, I swear to God, Brewers had to have seen 4VKM, because he's talking about a 40-year plan in this clip, right? And he just keeps talking. He's like, how, how did they get up like this? Like, there has to be something to fight back. Like, and they keep talking about 40 years, 40 years, 40 years. Later on in the clip, they bring up wrestling. So that's where I'm like, they got to be watching somehow, right? So, again, I mentioned this before. 40-year plan, when you spell out the word 40, it equals 176. Trump is 88. J. Kennedy is 88. You add them up, you get 176. So it's the Trump-J. Kennedy plan, 40-year plan. Probably goes back longer than that, to be honest with you. But it's all 176, and I'm kind of like the 176 guy too. So it's very interesting, to say the least. And when I saw Jim Brewer and those guys mentioning it, I was like, this is a little crazy right here. So on 2/3, February 3rd, 21, I ended up back on Conspiracy Horseman, and we're talking about a couple other things. We're talking about crypto. We're talking about Dogecoin. I basically said, the rumors that you're going to have Tesla and Elon Musk start buying Bitcoin and putting it on the Tesla balance sheets. That happened, right? And I also said the Tesla stock will go up as a result. That happened. And then what ends up happening, right? You have, this relationship that was kind of growing between Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports, and Elon Musk on social media, right? Because Portnoy was coming out against all the COVID stuff, all the lockdowns, all that stuff. And Elon was like cheering him on, like, yes, finally, like, you should run for office, he told him, right? So they had like a little bromance going on. And then Elon throws cold water on it, right? Because he comes out and he says that even though he had been buying Bitcoin, he comes out and he says, you know what? I don't really like Bitcoin. It's uses a lot of energy, so it's not good. We prefer something that's more energy efficient, right? So Bitcoin uses a lot of mining energy, and what I always found interesting about this is that how did Elon not know that before he started buying Bitcoin? Of course, he's a very smart man. Of course, he knew that before he started buying Bitcoin, right? So you could make the argument he was just pumping it, right? That was Portnoy's argument. He comes out, emergency press conference, pissed at Elon. He's like, Elon, what the hell? You were telling everybody to buy Bitcoin, and then you just tanked Bitcoin, right? And the whole crypto market came down with it at the same time. Now, I show you a couple clips as this exchange is all unfolding. One of them is John McAfee is asked by somebody if he knows who Satoshi is, who's the creator of Bitcoin, right? And he says, he goes, it can only be one person, and it always has only been one person. And he goes, ... Joel Katz, the time is now, or something along those lines. So he's basically pointing at David Schwartz from Ripple XRP as Satoshi. Now that has a lot of legs, that theory, because David Schwartz used to work for the NSA, and there's patents from around that era that basically outline the whole, cryptography and digital money and all that stuff. So the timeline kind of lines up with that, and kind of supports that theory that Bitcoin was a government op, right? So I found it very interesting that McAfee comes out and he says, without 100% saying it's him, he's basically like implying it's Joel Katz, right? So I always thought that was very interesting. You also have, Portnoy at the time. We're talking about the mayor of Miami. Mayor of Miami is trying to get all these crypto people down to move to Florida. And at the time, he's trying to get Barstool to move down to Miami as well. Dave ends up buying a house down there in Miami. All good. But Miami has become a hub for crypto in the United States and Bitcoin. At the very least, so it's been doing okay. I guess not really. When I look at my portfolio, not really, but keep the faith, right? Keep the freaking faith, right? So these guys, Portnoy, he becomes the Baron of Bitcoin, right? He's loading up. He's still getting, he buys $1 million of Bitcoin or something. Elon, he's pissed at Elon because Elon tanked it. He did pump Dogecoin, though, on SNL. When he owes to that, he went straight up Dogecoin. That's when it hit its all-time high that night. And it's funny how many people I know that reached out after I was telling them for months, buy Dogecoin, buy Dogecoin, buy Dogecoin. And then they're asking me at, 12 o'clock when Elon's hosting SNL, should I buy it now? Yeah, buy it now. And it, went straight down. So, sorry about that, guys. But a digital asset investor, he's an interesting personality on Twitter and YouTube. Very informative when it comes to anything XRP. He talks about the PayPal mafia. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk from back in the day. We show in this clip, actually, the X.com credit card or debit card that they were pushing at the time, right? Because remember, that was Elon's plan in 99 was X.com. So you have X.com, you have the PayPal mafia, and you have Elon saying that he'd prefer an energy-efficient crypto. And he shits on Bitcoin because it uses too much energy, right? So, again, Elon's a smart guy. There's no way Elon doesn't know about XRP. I don't think you can ever find him talking about it, right? But he has to know that it's pre-mined, it's carbon neutral, right? So it checks all these boxes. The perfect coin that he's describing is XRP, right? So, is he giving us any signs maybe? Maybe he is, because what's the saying for Dogecoin? It's much wow, right? So I start, we're in gematria mode this 2021 period, and we're decoding everything, right? And, much wow comes out to 106. Buy XRP also comes out to 106, right? So which one is it? Is he saying much wow, buy Dogecoin, or is he saying buy XRP? I don't know. I mean, I think this guy uses this gematria stuff, or we know, the elites kind of use it because that's how they communicate amongst each other for so long. So another one is diamond hands, right? That's the other one. Dave's using diamond hands. Elon says Tesla has diamond hands when it comes to holding their Bitcoin, even though they sold it. And diamond hands is also 106, right? So you have much wow, buy XRP, diamond hands. They all equal the same numerically, which is crazy, right? Show you a post from Anon Up. Remember we were talking about that? VK, Vincent Kennedy. He posts a little list of the cryptos that he is kind of recommending everybody buy. XRP is at the top of it. VET was another one on there. XLM was one, but it was spelt wrong, I think, unless he meant something else, right? And a lot of them were the ISO 0220, something like that, whatever it is, ISO 2022, so whatever the hell it is, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. So go check out the list if you're still interested in buying that stuff. Not a bad list to go after there. And the prices are they're probably lower than they were when the list came out. So another one that is kind of tied to this is Casino Coin, right? Now there's just a amendment done to the XRP ledger where the validators they'd have to vote to pass the amendments, right? And there's this character, Daniel, who he is, I think, the CTO for the company that's behind the Casino Coin. Casino Coin is on the XRP ledger. It's $CSC. And the Casino Coin is basically like the XRP, but for casinos, right? So they want to make that the native currency for casinos, and then get rid of cash in casinos. They'll have the digital tokens, so they'll save a lot of money. It's, same thing, carbon neutral, all this stuff. That's kind of his whole shtick, right? Now, what's interesting is his Twitter account is Daniel_WWF, right? We all remember the WWF from back in the day, right? And I asked him, I said, hey, dude, I said, did you have anything are you an old school WWF fan? Or are you a fan of the WWF, the pandas that stole their name, right? And he responded to me, and he said, neither. That's okay. It's interesting, right? But then that got me thinking about the name change. When did they do that name change from WWF to WWE? And does it mean anything, right? Well, they did it on the on the date 5/5/2002. May 5th, 2002. Cinco de Mayo, 2002. 5/5. Let's use gematria for a second, right? So just take 5/5. 5/5. 55. You get JFK JR 55, right? 2002. Drop the zeros. They don't mean anything. You get 22. MAGA is 22, right? So the date of the name change from WWF to WWE, if you're reading it in gematria, translating it in gematria, it says JFK JR MAGA. Make America Great Again, right? Okay, that's interesting. Is there anything else that happened on that day? There is. You might have heard about a little thing called the plane ride from hell. And if you haven't, look that up. A couple wrestlers lost their job on that flight, but it was basically they were in the UK and they were flying back to the United States. And long trip, right? And this was known as the plane ride from hell. A lot of people got in trouble on it. And let's decode plane ride from hell. Plane ride from hell is 173, right? Or you can look at that as 17 times 3. What's the new name for WWE? It's WWE, and the gematria on WWE is 51, right? So again, 17 times 3 is 51. So you have it all. This is all on the same day. The plane ride from hell, the name change, WWF to WWE, 51, 3 Qs, QQQ. That is WWE. So found it very interesting and thought this was a good part of the series to interject that little information in for you guys. All right, where are we at? We're making good time here. We're getting through. What else here? What else? I got new glasses, but it's still very small because I had so many notes. All right, shot around the world. Shot heard around the world. It wasn't any shot. It was the little bit shot heard around the world, right? Portnoy, he's on Fox News with Charles Payne, who big fan of Charles Payne. He's a good guy, right? He's like the finance business guy, does a lot of good stuff. Anyway, he's interviewing Portnoy, and they're talking about Bitcoin. They're talking about all this stuff. He's asking him about Gary Gensler, and Dave's kind of pushing back, giving him some attitude, and I think Dave says to Charles, "You don't know what you're talking about," or something like that, and Charles calls him a little bitch. He goes, "No, you're being a little bitch," right? And, we drop it off and we show you shot heard around the world, because that was the tweet that Dave had put out afterwards. After that clip was, it was little bitch shot heard around the world, right? So we know about shot heard around the world, Concord, Lexington, but it's also in a couple drops. So found that would be nice for you. At the same time, you have Charles asked Dave about Gary Gensler. He's like, "Hey, are you going to speak up for the common man?" Because that's who Dave's representing with his Davey Day Trader Global show, where he's telling people the meme stocks to buy and all that stuff. And he's like, "Hey, are you gonna stand up to Gary Gensler?" And hilariously, Dave's like, "Who's Gary Gensler? I don't even know who that guy is," right? And Charles is like, "He's the chairman of the SEC. We gotta go." And Dave says, "Don't be a little bitch, Charles. Don't be a little bitch." But who else was Gary Gensler? Gary Gensler was the CFO for the Clinton campaign in 2016. What are the odds of that? And guess what? What happened in that campaign? Somebody had to make payments for the Steele dossier and for some of these other, disinformation that they paid for to try to get Trump, right? Who was the CFO? Gary, as Mr. I likes to say. Gary, are you there? So, can't wait till the day the hammer drops on good old Gary Gensler, because I'm sure one day it's coming, right? So, again, we were talking about the Gridiron Gang, right? The Barstool connection, in this series, and the football connection, and we mentioned him one other time, but we're also talking about another guy in this series called McAfee, right? We're talking about John McAfee, but there's another McAfee that's relevant, and he ends up trending sometimes, and it kind of helps bring up some of the McAfee stuff with it. But that's Pat McAfee, who used to be the punter on the Indianapolis Colts, retired, joined Barstool, left Barstool, got his own gig. Now he's a huge megastar ESPN. He just was doing the Aaron Rodgers stuff. I guess you guys probably remember all that. Rodgers was coming on and calling out Jimmy Kimmel and calling out the vaccine and all this stuff. So McAfee has been doing his damn thing, right? So he gets hired by Vince McMahon to be a commentator on SmackDown. What are the odds? This last Monday on Raw, he just returned to WWE, and he's now going to be full-time with Michael Cole as the commentator on Raw. So McAfee is back as of this week, and we're covering it, from 2021 today. So very happy about that. McAfee is the man, right? We love McAfee. So, McAfee is back. Going back to the Barstool guys, a guy that debuted with the Barstool guy, BFW, who is running the Wrestling podcast. His name is LA Knight. And again, he's a megastar now today. But what was LA Knight doing back then when he was in NXT in 2021? He got together for the first time with the $1 Million Man. And the $1 Million Man has the $1 Million Championship, right? So they bring that back. That was a championship from the early 80s, from that WrestleMania 4 and 5 era. And Ted DiBiase is his manager, right, for like a day until LA Knight turns on him. But LA Knight becomes the $1 Million Champion. So what's $1 Million Champion when we break that down into gematria? It's 225. What else is 225? Boom, 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 boom. 5 booms, I believe it is. That equals 225. And when you look at 5 booms, what brings up 5 booms? It is drop 1440. And in here, I'm not smart enough to have this part memorized, nor did I have the whiteboard space to write it all down. But if you look at drop 1440 and you drop the 0, and then you decode all the other lines in there, basically the numbers come down to 881. 881, mirror image of that is 188. And, 188, couple cool 188s here. So first one is show me the money, 188, right? So literally, negative 48 breaks this down. He goes, okay, I'll show you the money right now. You have a $100 bill. You have a $50 bill. You're up to 150. Then you have a $20 bill. You're up to 170. Then you got a $10 bill. You're up to 180. Then you got a $5 bill. You're up to 185. You $2 bill. You're up to 187. And a $1 bill. You're up to 188. 188, show me the money, is 188, and it's also President Kennedy is 188. And when I think about this now in retrospect, now I'm thinking about the debt clock, right? And the debt clock, debtclock.org, I think it is, that's been given some commie stuff lately. And what's the money that they always show on there? It's like a cartoon dollar that says debt-free money, I think silver certificate or something, or gold back, something like that. And who's the president on it? It's President Kennedy, JFK. So it's interesting. He's on the money. Show me the money. All the money adds up to 188. He is 188, President Kennedy. So it's very, very, very interesting. Now, you want to know something else that's very interesting? That helicopter crash. Remember I covered that 2 episodes ago? Sun Returns. Here Comes the Money was the name of that episode. And the number on that helicopter was 188. That was on the call sign, right? 188. So you have 188 on the helicopter, right? So I don't know how the hell I got this clip, how I found it, how I stumbled upon it. But again, sometimes you're just inspired. There's something in you that says, look this up, look that up, check the numbers on this. It just comes from within. I can't really describe it other than that. Or maybe sometimes you see something on Twitter and it makes you think of something and then you go searching for it, right? I don't remember how the hell I found this, right? But there is a clip of Kim Clement. I haven't talked about Kim Clement before, but he's doing one of his events, and it's on 6/3/2015, and I believe he's in Los Angeles. He's somewhere in California speaking, and he's talking about Long Island and Babylon. That's where the helicopter crash happened, 188, right? So he's talking about this, and he says something like, we will show you who's in charge, in that area, right? So I'm like, that's interesting. He mentioned Long Island. He mentioned Babylon. That's where the helicopter crashed. Let me find out how many days were in between from when he said that to when Shane's helicopter went down. Remember, Shane's helicopter went down on 7/19/2017, a year after he came back to WWE. How many days was it in between? Kim Clement saying, we'll show you in Long Island, in Babylon, New York. It was 777 days. What's it mean? I don't know. There's a lot of numbers that associate Trump with 777. I think his first day in office, or the day he was inaugurated, he was 70 years, 7 months, 7 days old, I think. So a lot of people point at that. There's a couple other stuff. Think of casinos, 777s on the casinos. What did Trump do? Casinos. In fact, that's where his WrestleManias were, Trump Plaza. There's casinos there. So, very, very weird stuff. And then, so we transition. We're back to Jim Brewer. I'm telling you, Jim Brewer's got to be a 4VKM guy on the DL. Give me a shout out, Jim. Give me a shout out, or have me on your show one time. We'll break records over there too, even though you have a lot big people go on that show. But Jim Brewer, he's outside in the woods walking, and he randomly just tweets a video out about, he's like, man, can you imagine being JFK Jr. and knowing what they did to your dad and the whole world had to see it? He's like, imagine having to grow up like that. And he's like, crazy. And he kind of just ends the video at that. And what's he insinuating right there? Hey, if that happened to you, what would you do? And this is where I go back to everybody who's like, oh, what? Why would he fake his death? Why would he fake his death? Well, look what they did to his dad, right? If you thought that they were just going to let Junior get his revenge, right? Or not want revenge, right? They thought he didn't want revenge. Yeah, I would have faked my death too if I was in his situation. And I would have gone underground, and I wait for my time, plan meticulously for decades and decades to make my return. Hit the knockout blow when nobody sees it coming. But I guess that's probably why people don't like, us talking about JFK Jr. is because it's supposed to be a surprise, I guess. Or maybe I'm wrong, and it's nothing. But I don't know. Jim Brewer thinks it's something. So we move on. We go into Lashley. I start playing, remember Lashley? Start playing one of his old theme songs, right? Which is There's a Storm Coming is the phrase of it, right? It's one of the phrases in his old song. It was an alternative song. He didn't use it a lot, but he had it for a short period. And one of the phrases, there's a storm coming. Kind of interesting. He was Trump's guy at WrestleMania, and he's talking about a storm in his song. So, what do you got? You have Lashley. You have -48. He's on with Roseanne. And Roseanne, I remember in that episode, Roseanne's like, is he alive? Talking about JFK Jr. And, -48 gives his opinion on it. But he also explains to Roseanne how Lashley was in WWE with Trump and all this other stuff. And he kind of explains the whole WWE story to Roseanne, so Roseanne knows. Would love to talk with Roseanne about this one day. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that we can show her and tell her that she would like. So we were talking about the storm, right? And I am the storm equals 141. And you have Mr. President also equals 141. And when we think about Mr. President, we think about Marilyn Monroe, because that's who she sang to famously on at Madison Square Garden, where Vince McMahon is in the Madison Square Garden Hall of Fame. Hopefully it stays that way once he gets his justice. But so you have Mr. President 141. You have I Am the Storm 141. It's almost like JFK is the storm. And then what's the famous phrase? The calm before the storm. That is 198. President Trump is 198. President J. Kennedy is also 198. So you have that similarity there. Remember I was telling you the other day, JFK was president 35. Trump was president 45. If you add up those numbers, 3 plus 5 plus 4 plus 5, you get 17. What are the odds, right? So, you have President Trump. He's giving a speech and he's talking about woke, right? He's talking about the woke military generals, right? And he brings up General Patton, right? And a lot of people think that General Patton looks awfully like President Trump. And if you see pictures, and I show some in this clip right here, he does look, I mean, it looks like him for sure. So, I always thought that was very interesting, but he says, everything woke turns to shit. That's what he says. And it's funny, around the same time, you have the Washington Redskins. You remember them? Well, the mob came after them. They had to change their name to the Washington Football Club, right? Which was just a W. And by doing, that year that they had done that, or maybe the year after, a sewage pipe busts in the stadium and a bunch of shit pours down onto the fans, right? So literally everything that's woke turns to shit, right? And even in the football stadiums, shit everywhere when it goes woke, right? So, where else we go? Yeah. So now we're going to, we're talking about Lashley. Lashley is the almighty. He's 107. Almighty equals 107. So you also have that. Some more gematria, right? Trump's famous for his red tie. He wore that at WWE. He wore that on The Apprentice everywhere, right? So just break down red tie. Red is 27. 27 is JFK. Tie is 34. Tie is DJT, right? So again, red tie is showing you Trump, JFK, or JFK, Trump, right? Which way is it? Who knows? So then, this is where it gets very interesting. And this is all speculation. I'm not saying that this is exactly how it is, but it's an interesting theory that Negative 48 lays out about a gentleman that's at the D-Day ceremony that Trump is speaking at. His name is, I believe, Ray Lambert, and he's wearing a hat that says D-Day Survivor on the hat. So D-Day Survivor, and, basically, Negative 48's insinuation is that that's JFK. JFK was still alive, and, he's still around. Now, there's another guy that sits next to him that a lot of people say that is JFK. He's wearing, I think, light blue or something like that, and he's another World War II veteran. So, again, I'm not saying 100% they are. For all I know, JFK was assassinated, right, on 11/22/1963. But say if there were time travelers even, right? This, we're purely speculating, and somebody was able to prevent that from happening. Or even if there's not even any time travelers involved, maybe JFK just had the intel. He knew what they were going to do, went along with it, faked it, almost like how Trump knew what they were going to do with the election, went along, faked it, let them have it, right? So JFK let them have it, and maybe JFK went underground, right? And that was a double. The police officer in Dallas. People always show those comparisons, right? There's a lot of anomalies with the autopsy. And just so happens that the guy that did the autopsy on JFK did the autopsy on Epstein. What are the odds of that? So it's very interesting. Take a look at the clip. You can hear what Negative 48 says about that, and kind of make up your own judgment as well. A lot of people think that it's the other guy, but what's interesting is as Trump's talking about him, he's basically describing a lot of stuff that had to do with JFK. He talks about how he had a bad back. JFK famously had to wear a back brace. He talked about how he was injured in war. He talked about having to save other members, drag them to shore. He almost drowned. Kind of sounds like the PT-109 story when you look at that. So, again, I'm not saying that that's JFK. I just think it's an interesting theory, to say the least. And, figured I would share it with you. So, this is for the first time. We were talking about Lashley. Lashley was the WWE champion at that WrestleMania that I was at, WrestleMania 37. The first event back with fans, and he's the WWE champion. He beats Drew McIntyre, another 107. You have 107 versus 107. Drew 107 versus Almighty 107, right? So you got those two going at it. And while I'm sitting at WrestleMania, I don't know what inspired me to do this, but I shot a little video message for a new character that we're just introducing now into 4VKM, Shane Browning. So a lot of people know Shane Browning. Again, one of those polarizing figures. Some people love him, some people hate him. He's always treated me good, so again, I'm not going to say anything bad about him, similar to Negative 48. But, very interesting character, to say the least. Now, I'm sitting at WrestleMania, and I take a video selfie, and I send it out there. Shane's a big wrestling fan, loves wrestling as well, right? So I basically give him a shout-out from WrestleMania, post it out there for him. Now, what's interesting is that I'm watching SmackDown one night, and SmackDown was in Minnesota, very close to Wisconsin, and very close where they were at. It was like right over the border. And I'm watching it, and they show Michael Cole and McAfee, and this is in the video, and there's like a giant head in the crowd. And I'm looking at the picture, and I have to do a double take, and I have to rewind, and I'm like 99% certain it's a picture of my face. And I'm like, that's weird. So then I hit my brother up. I send him the picture. And I'm like, dude, I think somebody has my face in the crowd at SmackDown. And he goes, yeah, I was just going to text you the same thing. I thought the same thing. So I'm like, what the hell is going on, right? So you can see that sign go down, and you can see a little individual that was holding that sign wearing sunglasses. And you can make your own judgment on who that was. So a little 5-5 there between the two of us. Me at WrestleMania, potentially that person at SmackDown. But maybe not. Maybe that wasn't that person, right? But, we have Raw in Miami. And I'm there. And I bring a Vincent Kennedy sign, and I'm so excited. I'm like, I'm going to have my Vincent Kennedy sign on TV because I got really good seats right next to the ramp. I'm like, I'm definitely going to get on TV. Well, they confiscated my sign because I was too close. It would have blocked cameras, all that other stuff. So, okay, whatever. But that was the last Raw that Bobby Lashley was the WWE champion at. So he walks out. He walks by me. I'm like, hey, Lashley, you're the man, bro. Because I love Lashley. He's like one of my favorite wrestlers, especially that Trump connection right there. And he's just a beast. He deserved to be WWE champion. I was super happy when it happened. So fast forward 1 week later. They're in Boston. That's my hometown, right? And there's a nice, big, beautiful 617 sign in the crowd. So I'm very happy about that. The hometown team representing their city. Their area code, 617 in the crowd, made me very happy. And on this Raw, you have Big E. Big E wins. He beats Lashley for the WWE Championship, right? So Big E, couple things with him. Big E. Big E equals 23. That's been a common theme throughout here. WrestleMania 23. 7 plus 16 is 23. 6 plus 17 is 23. And what else is 23? End is 23. So, maybe the end is in sight. What's his finishing move? It's the big ending. So he wins with the big ending, becomes WWE champion, Big E. So big ups to Big E. Unfortunately, he got a bad neck injury a couple years, about a year or two after that. And he hasn't been able to come back, but we hope that Big E can come back and we can see him in a WWE ring once again. But for me, awesome that he won in Boston, and I'm glad I got to see Lashley and kind of give him my love before he lost his belt, right? So that's it for the main part of the show. I told you we'd get back to McAfee, right? And I kind of show you the McAfee Telegram channel that pops up out of nowhere. So you have the McAfee Telegram channel, and this is kind of, I noticed a common theme, which is there's these big accounts that pop up. They give really good information in the beginning, and then they go haywire, right? It's almost like they're lost control of, right? But they were there to serve a purpose in the beginning, and then don't pay attention to it now because you might get scammed or some shit, right? And maybe the scammers were the ones in the beginning too, but again, the information was interesting. So you have McAfee on Telegram now, starting to do the WikiLeaks type drop, right? That 107 was talking about. And it's very interesting. Who is he going after? He's going after Hillary Clinton. He's going after Podesta, who was in the news yesterday, right? What happened with Podesta? He is replacing John Kerry as the climate czar, right? What a perfect climate czar John Podesta is. Yeah, so Podesta back in the news. He was a target of McAfee back then. And I show you a clip of Stephanie McMahon, daughter of Vince McMahon. She's feuding with Roman Reigns, I think, at the time, and she ends up getting arrested, or no, it might have been with the Bellas. She was feuding with one of the Bellas, and she gets arrested. And as she's getting arrested, she's talking about how she's a powerful woman, and how dare you arrest her, and when she gets out, she'll have their ass, all this stuff, right? And I think it's in New York too. And I show you the comparison, right? So everybody was under the impression on 9/11, 2016, I think that's when it was, that Hillary Clinton had fainted, right? Remember, she fainted at the 9/11 ceremony, and then she's thrown into the van. Like, for somebody that's in medical distress, the way that they handled her and tossed her into the van, she lost her shoe, for God's sakes, right? It's very, very, very strange. A lot of people say that was Hillary getting arrested. Some people say Hillary never came back after that she was swapped out with a little clone. The person that emerges from Chelsea's apartment where she had gone does look a little different, right? So I won't throw that speculation out. But is this catch and release like what, Q was talking about here? It's never really been described as a arrest before. Everybody says it was a medical emergency. It's dehydration, right? But if you see her, she looked like Bernie, Weekend for Bernie's, right? Like, it just stuffed into the van, right? So, looks like she saw a ghost. Who knows? I don't know. But something didn't seem right there, and that's for sure. So, I show you the comparison. Maybe it was Hillary getting arrested. Maybe it wasn't, right? Around the same time, we have our boy VK. He's dropping some dates here. What's VK love? He loves red pandas, right? So, red pandas are actually... red, you have red is 27 is JFK, so that's a nice little connection. But National Red Panda Day is 9/18. 9/18 is also Mr. John McAfee's B-Day, his birthday, right? So on one of the Telegram things, he kind of drops a video like celebrating his birthday and whatnot. And then, the image of the file image is like, did you check my Twitter? So everybody checked his Twitter, and they saw it was his birthday that day, because the birthday is on there. So they're like, man, is this guy sending messages from the dead? I don't know. Maybe this was all pre-recorded, and he's just push them out, as they go along, right? Or maybe he's in Valhalla on Earth, Trump Valhalla, as I like to call it. We're only the best for our fallen soldiers. So the last thing, really, to kind of wrap this up, tying back to JFK, is you have that Drop 35. And Drop 35 says POTUS will be insulated on Air Force One. And then it's signed 4/10/20, DJT, right? So it's like POTUS will be insulated on Air Force One, DJT is signing it. So unless DJT is talking in the third person, who's he talking about as far as POTUS being insulated on Air Force One? So it's fun to speculate. Is he talking about JFK? It is Drop 35. And Drop 35, he was the 35th president. Now, what's the thing before 4/10/20? It's Bible verse, John 3:16, about sending his only son, right? So you have John 3:16. That ended up giving birth to Austin 3:16 in the WWE. And again, it's John 3:16, right? So you have John 3:16. Drop 35, POTUS will be insulated, signed DJT. What's going on? I don't know. But let's go back to McAfee, that birthday clip that he had. The last thing he says is, it was a very good year. And again, the phrase stuck out to me. He's singing a song, and the last words in that video are, it was a very good year. And that, I think it comes out the number to 233. And that's the same number that John Fitzgerald Kennedy comes out to, 233. So it's very interesting. You know, maybe this gematria is just like all just random coincidences, you know, but again, the combination of intuition with gematria and subconscious memory of 25 years of watching professional wrestling, and 5-6 years of following all the drops, and digging into the JFK Jr. situation for years. Sometimes maybe it's a confirmation bias. You're just looking for stuff and you find it and you're like, oh, yep, that's it. And, you draw as Ben Hameen says, a Charlie chord line to it or something like that. I don't know. But at the very least, there definitely seems to be something going on with the Kennedys and Trump. I think we could all agree that. Now, RFK and Trump, they're doing a little feud now. They're beefing finally on X and social media, so should be interested to see how that works out. But I don't know. I can't believe I got through all of it. I don't even know how long this video is. Probably a doozy, but there was a lot to cover. And again, the best thing you could do, rewatch the video. I'll have the link in the below. Gridiron Gang 4, Horsemen of Conspiracy, the McAfee edition. There's 2 McAfees. You got Pat and John. Some people say Pat was John's son. I don't think so. Remember when the skyscraper came down in Miami? They were like, that was Pat McAfee had a house there. He disputed that. But the names are the same. So when you see one trending, you'll see information about the other one too. So anytime I see McAfee show up, I feel like there's going to be some other McAfee news not far behind there. So make sure, watch the video, Gridiron Gang 4. That's it for the Gridiron Gangs. Maybe we'll have one later down the line. Don't forget, subscribe for VKM Podcast. It's going to be fire. 2/21, 2024, first episode. So that's going to be the conclusion of the 40 days of 4VKM. And 4VKM.com for all the other episodes. Check them out. We'll get these 40 days of 4VKM uploaded on there soon. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the show.